it's just really not that crucial. There are other things to talk about, and if people just see me as this strange character whirling flowers about or whatever, then it simply reflects upon the shallowness of the observer.
Well, that is how a lot of the public see you. I mean, I think a lot of people would say that your image is sort of rather wet, really.
They do. Some people do. I would say that more people don't. I think that people see me as being quite delicate, which in the world of popular music and rock and roll, if you like, is anathema. It is the worst thing to be delicate and not to be this big macho whatever. So therefore, since flowers and any kind of nature is just connected with total whimpery, to some degree I fall into that bracket. But I think I have other things that help me scramble out of the pit.
Like what?
Well, the words that I write, which is principally why I'm here. I mean, I'm not here to dissect insects or do anything like that. I'm here principally because I write.
But one of the lyrics, some of the lyrics you've written in Heaven Knows I'm Miserable Now. Why do I spend my time talking to people I'd rather kick in the eye? Who would you like to kick in the eye?
Well, on the very brief spasms of employment that I had in the past, it always seemed to me there were moments of the day when I would realize that I was here working with these people that I despise, and I have to talk to these horrible people and ask them what they did yesterday, and I would have to report to a boss that I couldn't stand. And when you're in that position, which was the absolute basis of Heaven Knows I'm Miserable Now, you realize that you're actually spending your entire life living with people that you do not like, and doing something that you do not like, which is incredibly distressing. So that was the basis of that song. I mean, kick in the eye. Yes, literally, sometimes, I mean, let's be perfectly honest, sometimes we do get so angry with people that we're not averse to violence, which, of course, is a terrible thing to say, but truth nonetheless.
Would Oscar Wilde have approved?
Probably. I think he would.
But being in the music business, you come across a lot of people in record companies, promotions companies, whatever, who I think would rub you up the wrong way. Have you found that there's been a higher incidence of you wanting to kick people in the eye in the music business?
An uncommonly high one. Most of the people that I come across in the whole industry that I have no real desire to form any friendships with, which is quite unsettling. But I still feel quite angry about most things, and I still feel on the outside, even though we've had some degree of success, national success, it doesn't really change the way you feel about life, which is quite surprising to me, because for some naive reason I thought that it would. But, I mean, the music industry is just like anything else in life. Nobody loves everybody. I mean, there are very, very few people in each individual's life that we adore. There's very few people that we really like.
Do you have many friends?
No, I don't.
Those that you have, are they in the music industry?
They're in the group. They're in the Smiths.
So the Smiths are your only friend?
As far as I can see, yes.
Does that sadden you?
It does, but it's something that isn't new to me. I've lived with it for quite a long time, so I don't really mind. I don't mind because in the Smiths and with the Smiths, to some degree, I'm getting exactly what I want, so it doesn't really matter.
Which is?
I'm writing, and people are paying some degree of attention, and for me that's everything. I mean, there's nothing worse than writing and letting everything just rot in the bottom drawer. It's really quite important, I'm afraid, to get some kind of approval and to have your words splattered about the country. And doing that, as I am, it's the highest degree of satisfaction, and there's nothing else.
You like the approval?
Yes, I do.
Because the NME has really created you. I mean, they gave you a big push.
They did. They weren't the first paper to write about us, and they weren't the first people to help us, but they were certainly incredibly supportive at the beginning of the year. Things have changed slightly now with all the music press. There is, I do get the advanced chill of a backlash, and it's bang on time, and it's really quite expected.
You ready for it?
Yes, largely. I mean, I think that we are quite indestructible in many ways. But I'm not saying that I'm terribly happy about it. I'm not happy when I read reviews in the music press. For instance, quite recently we played Belfast, 2,500 sell-out concert, and it was really quite hysterical, quite wonderful. We did 4 encores and everybody was enormously receptive. And then I read this review in the Melody Maker, which implies that the whole thing was entirely damp, entirely forgettable, and nobody cared. And then I read a review in the NME by a person called Anne McRae, who reviews a concert in Sheffield and doesn't mention the event in any vague detail, simply analyses my character and destroys it. But it does seem quite hateful and quite destructive, and I don't understand it completely. But ultimately, I'm above it, so it doesn't really matter.
Why are you above it?
Because as the day ends, one is still alone with in my instance, the words that I want to write and the things that I want to say. And in that area, I'm completely untouchable. Nobody will shove me off course, and nobody will make me believe that what I've done is wrong, or what I've written is wrong, or that the person that I am is a totally nonsensical character.
But if you're looking for approval, who are you looking for approval from? The media or the fans?
Well, I do read the music press, so it's very nice to have media approval, but it doesn't determine the way I write. I'll never sit down and say, well, I really have to do this because otherwise such a paper won't like me very much. That doesn't happen. But it is very good to get the support of the music press. I can't deny that.
Well, who do you think is the typical Morrissey fan? I mean, do you think they're all lonely sick formers?
No, I don't feel that. I'm sure a great deal of them are, but I look at our present audience, and it has changed a great deal. We've been the first group on an independent label to gain not only an independent audience but also a major audience. Nobody else has done that on an independent label, and I'm quite pleased about that. I look at our audience and I see the people who were there initially, the kind of severe, serious musicologists, and I realize now that we are attracting lots of very young people, and that becomes dangerous because I believe that the media do always judge you on your audience. They judge you entirely upon the people who come to see you, regardless of what exactly you're doing on the stage. But I see our audience as being incredibly vast. There are lots of people from all walks of life. We're not regimented to a certain sect of people. We're no longer regimented to this serious musicologists or teenies or whatever. It just seems to be everybody.
But given this, you have a very sort of miserable image.
Mm.
Are you the kind of Leonard Cohen who was the doomy singer-songwriter of the 60s? Are
No.
you the Leonard Cohen of the 80s?
No, I don't think so. I can't see that in any way. And I don't feel morbid, and I don't feel depressive, because I thought it was quite important to say things that were quite serious and quite open, in a way that in the past had been considered to be quite depressing, but to say them in a way that by reason of them being aired was really quite positive. There is something quite positive in saying, in being very open with the people around you and saying, well, look, this is exactly how I feel, because then you get over those barriers, and it really isn't done that often. And I do feel there is a twinge of humour in the way that I write. And if that isn't absolutely apparent, then to a degree I understand it, but I do try to inject it. I don't want to be considered morbid by any degree.
Why the band called The Smiths?
Because the name, it occurred to me that the name, nobody could put any possible connotations on the name, and I really liked that, because it came at a time when group names were vastly important, were biblical, were monstrous, had a great deal to say, were very long, and were in themselves a lifestyle. I wanted to get rid of all that kind of rhetorical dribble and just say something incredibly basic. And Smith, to me, sounded quite down to earth.
Hey, you're a vegetarian. That must pose problems for you on the road with the other Smiths.
Yeah.
Because apparently they're into sort of booze, birds and burgers.
All at once.
Not necessarily.
Well, yes. Yes, it is a great problem.
If they're your only friends, that must create problems.
It is, and they know how I feel, but I don't stand on the table and say you can't possibly eat that piece of meat and go into a long monologue about the piece of meat. I don't do that. I don't try and inflict the way I feel upon other people, because that's quite boring. And people know what meat is, and people know how the leg of lamb comes onto the table. And they don't want to be reminded, frankly.
So are you keener, are they keener on the sort of rock and roll lifestyle more than you are?
If I said yes, that would sound quite ungenerous and almost like a slur. It'd make them out to be just incurable heavy metal addicts, which they're certainly not. They're quite sensitive people, but they are quite more traditional musicians than I am.
So do they party a lot? Yeah.
Yes, as often as they can.
So, if they are your only friends, what do you have in common?
Well, it does take a great deal to make the music. For strangers cannot simply huddle together and do what we do. And therefore there has to be some kind of mystical communion between us and some bond. And there is, and as time goes by it gets stronger. And whatever happens with the record companies or with the music industry doesn't really have any effect on us. We just really want to stay together as four individuals and make records. That's the only ambition that we have.
You have no ambitions beyond music?
Not the traditional ambitions within music. We don't have them. I mean, going to Yugoslavia, to America, touring the world, that doesn't appeal to us in any small degree. We can't kind of jump into the rock and roll treadmill.
So how are you going to survive then if you don't conform to that? I mean, purely from a financial point of view.
It's possible. I wouldn't say that it was incredibly easy, but I'm sure it is possible. And for me, just to make records that get some vague degree of attention is all that I really require.
Do you have no other ambition?
There are things that I'd like to do, but I feel that what I'm doing now has to be done now. I do want to write, but that can wait. There won't always be a time when I can do this.
Well, what would you like to be doing in, say, 5 or 10 years' time?
I do want to write. I still do write, but I would like to. I would like to be successful in that area.
And what would you like to write? Books, plays?
Yes, I would. I'd like to write. I'm very interested in there's a particular screenplay that I'm blustering through at the moment. But to talk about these things seems incredibly pompous and ostentatious, and it almost sounds entirely careerist. I want to do everything. I'm going to sing in the script, and I'm going to write a screenplay, and I'm going to make a film. But I do have other ambitions, which I'm sure in this business, well, in many cases, one thing tends to lead to another.
Well, we're in Bath, in the secluded English countryside, talking to Johnny Marr from the Smiths. How are you, Johnny?
Well, thanks.
What are you doing here in Bath?
We're doing the new LP. We're sort of midway through it now. We've got a couple more weeks to go on it. And it's going well. We're working hard. We've been here about 4 weeks. The LP's called Strange Ways Here We Come. It should be finished in